this morning, Hazel Gashoka, will talk about a video that she posted online and received a legal threat from a lawyer paid by the university over. And my name is Joseph Hickey. I have been a student here for many years. I recently finished my master's degree in the summer, and I'm currently working as a teaching assistant in the Faculty of Science. While I was a graduate student, I was involved in politics on campus. I was a representative for graduate students in the Faculties of Science and Engineering. And Hazel was a co-senator along with me. And as senators, we initiated a blog online called the Forum for Discussion and Debate on the lawsuit St. Louis versus Rancourt, which is a defamation lawsuit that involves many people at the University of Ottawa directly and indirectly. And the video that's the subject of today's press conference was posted on this blog. And so I'd like to give you a little bit of background about that blog, what it's about and where it came from. And so to do that, I'll read from the statement of purpose for that blog, which was posted in December 2011. And it reads as follows. As a student member of the University of Ottawa Senate, I have followed and worked on matters related to the defamation case of Assistant Professor of Law Joanne St. Louis versus former Professor of Physics Denis Rancourt. Reports about my work as a Senate member can be found at the blog A Student's Eye View. That's another blog. Following my post of author Jeff Schmidt's letter to University President Alan Rock, I received a legal threat over defamation from Ms. St. Louis's lawyer, Richard Dearden, who is paid by the university. This attempt by the university, via lawyer Mr. Dearden, to suppress access to information, discussion, and debate about a controversial case that raises serious societal and campus-relevant questions about racism, institutional criticism, and freedom of speech is unacceptable and does not reflect a university that I can be proud of. Therefore, as an elected student participant in the University of Ottawa's collegial governance system, I have decided to offer this uncensored discussion page about the St. Louis versus Rancourt defamation lawsuit as a service to the community. And then the statement of purpose asks readers to please comment freely. All comments will be posted, etc. And this was December 1st, 2011. And then on December 14th, Hazel joined the forum as a co-manager, and she wrote, I joined this forum about the Joanne St. Louis versus Denis Rancourt lawsuit as a full co-manager of the blog because, 1, there is a need for open and honest discourse irrespective of the litigation context. 2, both Joanne St. Louis and Denis Rancourt need to be held accountable for their political actions. 3, the core issue of systemic racism needs to be brought to the fore. This started with a report about systemic racism at the University of Ottawa. The central point has been lost in semantics. And so that was Hazel Gashoka as a student senator in the Faculty of Social Sciences in December 2011. And now Hazel's going to talk about the legal threat that she received. I received an identical threat as a co-manager of the blog. And I decided that I wouldn't be involved in taking down Hazel's video because the purpose of the forum is to host a variety of opinions and provide a platform for people to express their views freely about this lawsuit. It's wrong for the university to be paying for this legal threat. It's wrong for the university to use its immense power that comes from taxpayer money and student tuition fees to silence an individual who is expressing her opinion, let alone a former student and student senator. That's not how a university should operate. That's certainly not academic freedom. Yes, it's threatening and intimidating to receive such a letter, but I feel it is necessary to expose that action by the university in the hope that the public will agree that the university should change its ways and allow freedom of expression and criticism. No one should be immune from criticism and backed by an institution in pursuit of an individual critic. So as a final point, the forum, the blog stlouisvrancourt.wordpress.com, does accept a variety of opinions and welcomes opposing views. Ms. Gashoka's opinion is one opinion, and we welcome anybody else to submit their opinion about the lawsuit. And so I'll turn things over to Hazel.
Good morning, everybody. So I'm here today because I'm asking Professor Joanne St. Louis not to sue me. In 2008, the Student Union released a public report about systemic racism at the University of Ottawa. The university asked Professor St. Louis to act as an expert to assess the student report in a responding public evaluation report. The expert found that there is no basis for affirming systemic racism at the University of Ottawa. In March 2010, I emailed the professor to discuss her report since I was a stakeholder in the conclusion about systemic racism at the University of Ottawa. Professor St. Louis failed to respond to over half a dozen of my emails, and when she finally responded, she advised me that I should recontact her towards the end of May 2010 for a meeting, since she had too much on her plate. Moreover, she said that she'd be willing to have a full discussion with me at that time. As directed, I recontacted Professor St. Louis, however, she did not respond. It wasn't until I sent her a few more emails throughout the following months that I received an automated message stating that she was on sabbatical. If the report was done for the benefit of students of color, and I am a student of color, why would Professor St. Louis meet with me? On November 22nd, 2012, I sent an email to Professor Joanne St. Louis advising her that I made a video about her and posted on my blog. Moreover, I kindly asked her to provide me with any comments or correction, which I would have also posted to my blog. The matters discussed in the video arose while I was a student at the University of Ottawa. Professor St. Louis did not respond to my email, however, her lawyer, Richard Dearden, did. On December 18, 2012, I received a notice of libel from Mr. Dearden. In the YouTube video I made, I expressed the opinion that Professor Joanne St. Louis acted like Alan Rock's house Negro. The fact that she was hired by Mr. Rock, a white man, to write this report and then essentially said that systemic racism does not exist led me to that conclusion. I still hold that opinion today. As former president of Kilimanjaro Black Student Association, member of the 2008 Racism Task Force on campus, chairperson of the Student Federation of the University of Ottawa's Black History Month Committee, and co-founder of Black Caucus, I had the dubious distinction of being made aware of racism experienced by students of color, and I've also personally experienced racism on several occasions on this very campus. It is my contention that Professor St. Louis's report was not done completely for the benefit of students of color, and it appears that the evaluation was possibly made out of a desire to cover up a scandal for the university and not to objectively evaluate the student union's report. Anyone has the right to their opinion, and that is my opinion on this. I'm not trying to impose my opinion on anyone, I just want the ability to express it freely. Moreover, I believe that the University of Ottawa may be funding the potential lawsuit against me. St. Louis is already suing former U of O professor Denis Rancourt for $1 million for expressing a similar view on his U of O Watch blog. This defamation lawsuit, which began in 2011, is funded by the university and pursued by the same lawyer who has threatened me. On February 11, 2013, I sent an email to University President Alan Rock asking whether or not the university plans on funding the lawsuit against me. However, he has not responded. I am saddened that the university would potentially fund a lawsuit against me because a professor felt insulted. That's why I'm going public. I want to prevent this kind of thing from happening. I want a society where we can make these kind of criticisms of public figures. I'm a student who lives below the low-income cutoff, and I can't afford to retain legal counsel. As such, I'm asking Professor St. Louis not to sue me. Rather, I'd like to have a public discussion with herself, myself, and other students of color on our campus about her report and about the real problem of systemic racism on our campus. Please, Professor St. Louis, I ask that you not sue me and that you reconsider retracting your notice of libel that you sent. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
My name is Farida Adam. I'm here with some of Professor St. Louis's students. If I can hear everybody in I want to address the crowd, and I want to say three main things. First, I'm going to address Hazel and Hazel's video. The second thing I'm going to address is the Student Appeal Center's report itself. And the third thing I'm going to address is a personal attack that is Hazel's condoning, calling Professor St. Louis a house Negro, hence the personal issues with the lawyer. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is Hazel. I read the report. It was in 2008. It's been 5 years. I'm sad to see the effort here being put as to a personal attack on Professor St. Louis as opposed to having a conversation as to how we can all write a sustained, good report on how racism exists on this campus so that we can ask for institutional change. But even in reading the first sentences of the report, the spelling mistakes, the errors, the fact that less than 1% of the university was relied upon to make that claim does a disservice to us as Black students. This is not about Professor St. Louis, it's about the students. It's about making sure that there is no racism on this campus. So I don't know how an ill-conceived, poorly written report does that. It doesn't help any of us. And so that's my first issue. The second issue is, and I'm going to give Hazel an opportunity to respond, we acknowledge and want an open forum of conversation and discussion on this. But if you can point to the areas of Professor St. Louis's report where she says that racism is good and we should have a racist campus, I would love to read those parts, because I personally didn't find them. All I saw in Professor St. Louis's report was, could you please do a little bit better job and not be so lazy and sloppy when you're writing a report about racism? Now, finally, in terms of Professor St. Louis and the personal issue, well, when you call someone a house Negro and you condone a person who is not of color calling another person of color a house Negro, that is a personal attack. So whatever action Professor St. Louis has decided to take, and you call it a legal threat, we haven't seen the letter, so we have no evidence of this, and we simply have to rely on what you've said. When you call it a personal attack, when you personally attack someone, they have a right to respond personally in any way they see fit. That's the way it works. So this is, again, not about Professor St. Louis, it's about the students. Now, I want to say that I'm glad that most of the people here stand in solidarity with Professor St. Louis. The things that she's done for the Black community are unbelievable. This year we just celebrated, or this last weekend here in Ottawa, we celebrated the Black Law Students Association of Canada. We awarded Professor St. Louis an award for 19 years plus of service to Black students in Canada. When the faculty of law students had an issue with the N-word being etched on a door, it was Professor St. Louis who came to our press conference and held our hands and stood in solidarity with us to make sure that this campus isn't racist. So as a student of Professor St. Louis, as a person who's worked with her, and a person who's personally cried in her office because of the state of affairs on this campus, it is disgusting and asinine that someone would come and have a press conference to condemn her actions and furthermore condone someone for calling her a house Negro. I think it's disgusting and vile, and I encourage other people to come up here and talk about what Professor St. Louis means to them and how she supported them. Thank you.
My name is Iman. I am a second-year student at the English Common Law program. I'll keep this brief. I want to speak to what Professor St. Louis means to me and what she's done for Black law students at the University of Ottawa and other equality-seeking groups. I think what's happening here is that there's a deep misunderstanding between what has actually been said and what's been done. Professor St. Louis has a long history of social justice work. She's been an ally to Indigenous groups, she's a feminist, she's a critical Black theorist, she's an advocate and a passionate mentor. I think it's important that we start acknowledging St. Louis for the things that she has done. And if you can't afford to be sued, don't commit legal wrong. There is such a thing as defamation, and calling someone a house Negro, specifically a woman who has dedicated her career to advancing racial equality, is a legal wrong. And if she chooses to pursue it, I stand by her. So all I want to say is that Professor St. Louis has never denied racism in her report. She simply acknowledged that if we want to actually gain some traction, if we actually want to move forward and start gaining some racial equality on campus in the university, there needs to be some comprehensive research that's done. She has never once denied racism. I think there's a misunderstanding about what she has said, and I think there's a misunderstanding about who she is. So I encourage you to find out more about Professor St. Louis, find out more about her career, find out more about what she's done for not only racialized students, but all equality-seeking students. She's a phenomenal woman, and she does not deserve this. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Roshan Afterly, and I'm a first-year law student. I personally haven't read the recommendations that Professor Joanne St. Louis has written. But I take personal issue with the term House Negro. That term House Negro, for you as a black woman to stand by it, words uttered by a white man are very hurtful. The words themselves were used to divide and conquer black people. And I can reference and support Joanne St. Louis' effort to condemn that type of behavior because of things she's done for me personally, on a personal capacity, and not only me as a black woman, but all minorities in the school, as my colleague has just mentioned. So you, and I'm sorry that I forget your name, I want you to reflect on your support of the term House Negro and think about what it does to the black people you claim Joanne St. Louis is condemning or shunning or denying the fact that institutional racism exists, because your support of it actually perpetuates the same notion.
Hello, my name is Christian Levin. In any debate, I generally advise people to err on the side of the minority, to err on the side of the smaller group. As a black male, I know what it is, Hazel, I'm sure similar to go through academia, and always, I guess, have to question your place and question the actions of others and their intentions. But the reality in this case here is that Joanne St. Louis is someone who has just advocated relentlessly on behalf of all marginalized groups. I couldn't even speak really right now to the depth of her character, and as Fred already stated, the amount of times this year alone she's assisted racialized individuals as well as individuals from other marginalized groups, and really held their hand and supported them in any problems which they faced. So rather than get into that, I will tell you all here today that the information regarding Rancourt is all available online. The report itself is available online. And rather than push you to a given side, I'll tell you, look online, explore it yourself. We're all academics here, we're all intellectuals, and find for yourself the kind of work she really has done, because it is a direct reflection of her character. Trust me when I tell you, if Professor St. Louis was a House Negro, she would have been one a long time ago. That's all.
Hello. I stand here appalled. This is my university. I'm a graduate of this university. I'm a supporter of this university. This university is about intellectual pursuits, academic excellence, and I'm not going to talk about Professor St. Louis at all. What I do want to say is that I believe that Ottawa University should be graduating students who have a finer command of the language to express themselves in any debate without descending to labels. And so it's the language, it's the labeling that is concerning to me, because it is not what I expect a graduate of Ottawa University to be sent into. If you have an issue, I think that mentors from the Department of English, for example, or philosophy, could give a lot of advice as to how to express your freedom, how to demand your freedom of expression. Because you have the freedom of expression, you're not free to express it in any way. You're expected to express it with elegance, with courtesy, and with intellectual power. Thank you.
Good morning. I just want to say I am so proud to see the numbers that we have in comparison to the numbers that you have, so if we can all give a round of applause for ourselves. It is a travesty of justice that you would come out in this way and that you would defame our faculty member in the way that you have done. And it's a shame because I've heard about your history and you talk about the work that you've done for Black students on this campus, and we should be seeing you here and with us and not on the side of any concours. And on the point of the report, again, I want to reiterate what some of my colleagues have said earlier. At no time did our faculty, did Joanne St. Louis ever deny the existence of systemic racism at this university. What we said is that it renders bona fide claims of systemic racism loose, or it hurts claims of systemic racism when you come to conclusions and rely on data that is not reflective of the population. So what we should be doing is actually collaborating together and coming up with actual reliable data that demonstrates that systemic racism is here. So I think we're all on this side of the room anyway. We're all on the same page that we don't stand for systemic racism, and by no means would we ever deny that racism exists. Like that's exactly what we do not stand for. But to come back and to call Professor St. Louis to use the language that you have used, you have injured a lot of people, and I think a lot of our students are rightly aggrieved. And we have no better ally. We only have one Black professor in our Faculty of Law, who is also one of the most influential members of the legal community, the first Black bencher of the Law Society of Upper Canada, and a first for many people. And as I think we mentioned earlier, we had granted Professor St. Louis the National Hero Award last year in recognition for her 18 years of service. And just 2 nights ago, we celebrated Joanne St. Louis for 19 years of service with the Black Law Students Association of Canada. And during those 19 years, she has fought relentlessly for the rights not only of Black law students, but for racialized students in general, Aboriginal law students, Latin American law students, and for all people who really needed her support. We don't have anyone better. So when you attack Professor St. Louis, you attack each and every single one of us. Alors, that's the words I have to say, and I hope at some point maybe we can think of a chant. Maybe Vino, can you help me think of a chant on the spot? Any activists want to help me think of a chant? Participation. Okay, that's great. Okay. Does anyone want to sing it? Okay, I'm not a singer, so honestly you need to participate, okay? Don't put me on the spot and then not participate. So, oh, she'll come with me, good?
I diddly 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 dee. The last baby tree. Yeah. We will live in harmony. I diddly 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 dee. We the land from baby tree. Yeah. And we will live in harmony.
I absolutely believe that Professor St. Louis would want to see a reconciliation of this. Because I believe that in Professor St. Lewis's mind, you're all her precious children. So I wonder if, I'm sorry I don't know your name, I wonder if you would give some thought, however long it takes or however short it takes, to do something to bring reconciliation in this. Because I think that both sides have the same goal. Would you be willing for me to have a meeting between you and Professor St. Louis without interfering in the legal process? Would you? Could you come up? Could you come join me here?
I would love to have the kind of dialogue with Professor St. Louis. I would love that. That's why I'm here today. I'd like to talk to her from day one since I've been trying to get a hold of her. So.
Well, I'm an elder in the community. And the fact is, you're my grandchild. You're all my grandchildren. And when you get to this stage of life, you know that really everything has a solution if you have the will for it and if you have the right tools. So I'm still practicing my tools. I still haven't got a lot of things right, but I'd like to help to get this one right. Would you help me? Would Professor St. Lewis's group please join me? Even one of you? Because, at the end of the day, we're all sisters and brothers. So we're going to try this? Okay. Give me a couple of days. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to briefly speak to who Professor St. Louis is and has been to me. I'm one of her students at the Faculty of Law. Joanne has been a rock for me and for a lot of her students, not only at the Faculty of Law in Ottawa, but across the country. She stands in support of us, in solidarity with us. She has aspirations for us. And she has been a total guide for me so far in law school in terms of my professional development, my academic success. And this is just something that she does from her heart. It is not, required of her. She puts in the time when she doesn't need to. Joanne is one of the strongest women people that I know. She's not the type to take orders from anyone. She is such an independent woman. She is one of my idols, and if there's any, I feel like I'm eternally indebted to her. That's how much she has impacted me. So, I will absolutely be by her side, whenever she needs support, and this is just one instance of that support. So, thank you for those who have come out to show your support. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Everyone, I come before you today to speak as the National President of the Black Law Students Association of Canada. I would like to say that I am absolutely disgusted that we are here today to stand on behalf of trying to fight for Professor St. Louis's name. She is a mother, she is a friend, she is a mentor, she is a sister, she is just everything and more. I mean, the Black Law Students Association of Canada, we just had our 22nd annual national conference, and Professor St. Louis was there to not only support us, but to lend her words of advice and her own pocket to her own money to furthering the cause and furthering the needs of the Black law students. And to stand here today and hear that you think it's okay to call her a house Negro, that is disgusting. And what hurts me even more is you stand as a Black woman calling her a house Negro. There is nothing, the words cannot describe how disgusting that is. It is absolutely disgusting, and there's nothing else that I can say to that other than it is disgusting. She's helped us in so many ways. Just because you feel as though, you know what? I can't even continue. This is gonna make me cry, and somebody else needs to step up to this plate right now.
I don't think this should be an issue with the character of either Hazel Gashoka or Ms. Senley. I think it should be an issue of freedom of expression. And at what stage does someone saying something actually physically harm someone versus whether someone simply doesn't like it. Like if you say fire in a cinema and someone gets injured, one could make the argument. But in this case, I think it would be difficult for Ms. Senley to prove that she was somehow physically hurt by someone expressing their opinion of someone else. In your perspective, and you have the freedom to express such an opinion.
I'm back. Okay, so I think that, again, like, the purpose, I think, for us coming here is not just to vilify Hazel or say that she's a bad person, because, like, a lot of emotions are here because Professor St. Louis has literally supported each of these students who are looking at you. So it's hard to hear someone who's loved you so dearly to be disparaged in the way that you're disparaging her. But if you're talking about in terms of just this being simply a freedom of speech, well, freedom of speech means that you can say what you want. So Hazel was the first, among the first people to stand up here and say her piece, but it doesn't mean that we don't have the right to engage with what you've said. It doesn't mean that we don't have the right to critically assess what you've said, and we don't have the right to call out when you said that she essentially is trying to ensure that racism exists on this campus, when that's the very thing that she's trying to fight against. So freedom of speech does not mean that we have no right to response, and it certainly doesn't mean we don't have a right to engage. Now, in terms of the legal piece, you personally attacked her. Hazel personally attacked her by calling her House Negro. So when you leave the realm of discourse in terms of whether or not she's an anti-racist scholar or person, and you start personally attacking her morals and her ethics, especially when she was asked to do this on behalf of the university in terms of the university personnel, to me I'm very confused as to how you feel like you have a right then to call her a House Negro, but then no one has the right to critically engage with you, and then Professor St. Louis does not have the right to do or use whatever mechanism she sees fit, especially when her career and her whole reputation is based on supporting these students. And it's not just Black students, they're Aboriginal students and Asian students. She has literally bent over backwards for us. So I want you to understand why it's so emotional for us, because it's very difficult to hear someone say such negative things. So if we're going to talk about the personal, we didn't make it personal. Y'all made it personal. So we just responded to that personal attack you made. And I watched the video and I was surprised because, I mean, if you were going to make a claim, at least quote her. You were saying essentially she said X, Y, Z. And I want Hazel to come up here and respond, because I don't want this to be like a massive attack on her. I really do want to, actually, my purpose of coming here was to make sure that we come together and move away from attacking Professor St. Louis. But let's write a report together and use good data and find great information so we can actually say racism exists on this campus and we need to work together to make sure that that doesn't happen. But I think that this idea that it's about you and your personal opinions on Professor St. Louis, well, when you're attacking someone's professional career and that person decides to do whatever it is, and again, we don't know because we have seen no evidence of such, and as law students, we know that things don't exist unless there's evidence for them. We have a hard time. We have a hard time with that. So I invite Hazel to come up here if she has a response, if she wants to say something, to talk to us. Know that we're not here to vilify you, but we're just hurt. It's an emotional hurt when you're talking about somebody we love so dearly. So I don't know if you want to come up here and talk to us or not. Okay. Okay.
But again, the purpose here is also to have that kind of open dialogue. And I'd love to sit down with yourselves, Professor St. Louis, to talk about it. I've read the report. Again, as I stated before, I sent her several emails. She never responded to me. I was doing it in the capacity of the president of the Black Student Association. And I wanted myself and other members to want to meet with her to discuss this report. She never got back to me. She said she would, and then finally got an automated message that she wants it back. And I've been trying to contact her for years. I'm still open to talking to her, to having some kind of open dialogue. Definitely, I'm open to that. I gave this madam here my information, my contact information, so definitely.
Right, because I think from our perspective, since it's been about 5 years, we're trying to move away from this conversation and say, okay, well, why don't we have a resource with all the students of color on campus? We have a great pool of information. Why don't we come together and write a really good report that documents the experiences of people of color on this campus? And I think that's exactly what Professor St. Louis was asking for in the beginning. And I'm just really confused in terms of the lost in translation. How did all of that get lost in translation? And we get to the point where it's simply, she's saying racism is a great thing and we should live in racist society. Like, I'm so confused with how that happened. So I invite anybody else to speak if they want to speak, or...
I want to address the freedom of expression argument that we're talking about. I think we need to acknowledge the limits of freedom of expression. There is harm. We're talking about a woman. The reason why we're talking about her character and her career and everything that she's done for us is because that slur that is grounded in a history of oppression and domination is hurtful to a woman who has exercised her freedom of expression by continuously advocating for racial equality and promoting advancement of the inclusion of many groups. Professor St. Louis, of all people on campus, is the largest advocate of freedom of expression, to the limit for which you are causing harm. That's exactly it. That slur is causing harm. And Hazel, if Professor St. Louis hasn't, I say to you, if she hasn't responded to you, there are many reasons why she may have. I don't know what those are. To make the giant leap that she suddenly is pro-white supremacy or pro-racism is a huge leap. It's a huge assumption. We all stand here to explain to you this is not the woman that she is. We can't believe that was her intention. If you look at the report, that was not what she was saying. There are many, I don't know why she didn't speak to you, but we stand here, we're willing to talk to you now. You need to acknowledge the hurt that she's probably dealing with by all of this defamation against her character and against her professional career. So if she's not prepared to talk to you right now, I think that's a bit understandable. I think we're standing here as brothers and sisters, open and willing to talk to you about the women that we know, about the racism that we faced, and about the same struggle that you have.
I just wanted to say that I've also been personally inspired by Professor St. Louis. Her ability is humbling, and the woman that Hazel described is not one that I recognize. I know Professor St. Louis very well. I know her for her huge heart and her tireless efforts to combat injustice wherever she sees it. And I know that this case and this issue weighs very heavily on her. And so I ask that perhaps you can have some empathy for her and understand how it might feel to spend your whole life fighting injustice, struggling, in constant, she's always on the offensive. She's done so much. Everyone knows she has no shortage of enemies. And she doesn't need any more and she doesn't want any more. And I ask, and I think we all ask, and I'm sure you can understand that, and reach inside and touch that compassion and be a little bit more understanding, perhaps. That's all I can say.
Hi everyone, my name is Natalia. I'm from the Mayan and Aztec Nation, and I took public law with Professor St. Louis last year, and her teaching really spoke to me. I am someone who didn't get into law school because of the LSAT score, and as I got to know St. Louis, she really brought a lot of herself into the classroom, and I resonate with that kind of pedagogical teaching where it's the professor, like we know something about the professor and what they've done. And so I got to know the kind of work that she was doing outside the classroom. And I also got to learn that she was involved in the access admission, developing the access admission category, and I applied through the access admission category. So this is where the law school, when they're selecting applicants, they look at your community work. They don't just look at the academics. And this is something she developed, however many years ago. She also, so there's many of us who have been beneficiaries, people that don't fit that LSAT, don't fit that box of, and the LSAT, there's been studies done that it really, that LSAT score is really an indicator of how well white male students will do in first year law school, and it's not an indicator of how well you're going to be as a lawyer, as a practicing lawyer. And the other thing I wanted to share is many of us have also been beneficiaries of the Access and Equity tutorials. So these are tutorials. Additional support for first-year students that are really, learning a new language, in the law world, where we get to sit down with TAs and really try to understand this material that's coming to us. And so I thank Professor St. Louis for these examples that I've given. Thank you.
that wants to say something else that you'd like us to respond to, or that you're unclear about, that we can restate for you?
Freedom of speech.
We hear you, we're open to talking.
I just wanted to quickly ask, for those who are not her students, did you know about her prior to this press conference? Had you heard about who she was outside of the lawsuit situation? Yeah? What did you know about her? On peut le faire en français aussi? Nothing? You were her student as well? Okay. And so what kind of person did you think that she was?
She was like a nice social justice professor.
Okay. And apart from that, in terms of her personality, her community activities, nothing?
changed for the past entire year and the year before and all of that in the context of a defamation lawsuit, and the sister is asking a question and we hear silence. We hear silence is deafening. Huh? I was saying the silence is deafening and it's making me angry.
And I don't know if you feel attacked, but we're not trying to attack you. We're a large group. But this just speaks to her character, and this speaks to her support. We stand in solidarity. So I can appreciate if maybe you don't want to, if maybe you feel like we're attacking your position. We are, but we're open to hearing your side, because if you're going to put it out there, this is the response you're going to get. You are talking about an icon on this campus. You're talking about a woman who has dedicated her career to ensuring that voices are heard. So we'd like to hear your voice. Our voices are here to speak to you.
My name is Mireille Gervais. I'm the director of the Student Appeal Center, and I authored the original report where I denounced systemic racism. And I think that one thing that's been really lost in all of this is that my report and these statistics that I brought forward come from the testimonial of the clients that came to my office in that specific year. And they were specifically related to the question of academic fraud, which is I could speak about academic fraud for a long time, but it's a system that really puts tremendous stress on students once they're involved in it. And what I had seen in the year of my report is that over 70% of the clients who came to me for cases of academic fraud were part of racialized groups. And it's a problem that I had brought to the attention of the administration on numerous occasions, and Alan Rock promised to address it, never did. And in 2011, the Globe and Mail came out with an article explaining that the problem that I was pointing out had been noticed in many other Canadian universities. And it's a problem that remains, it's a problem that I continue to see at my office to this day, and that no one is speaking of. And I think that the issue my center took with the reaction of the administration was instead of engaging in concrete solutions to address that very serious problem, was to hire someone, Joanne St. Louis, to attack my methodology, which I've always been very open of recognizing that we're a student union office and the report was much more of a manifesto than it was a scientific report. But the fact remains that I see clients every day and I see the effects of systemic racism on our campus, and I'm sure a lot of you do as well. And so in accepting to write an evaluation of my report and claiming it to be independent, I think you all know this, in claiming it to be independent from the administration, when freedom of information documents, they're up to interpretation, of course. My interpretation is that the evaluation was not independent. That was always my issue with the case. But regardless, all of this, what it's done is that to this day, we're not talking about how academic fraud and the terrible system of academic fraud often leads to racialized groups being caught up in a system that is fundamentally unfair. And when you read my report, you'll see that it's about academic fraud and the impacts and the injustices that we continue to see in that system to this day. So I think that brings it back a little bit to the core issue of what we were trying to denounce. And when you can criticize the report for the way it's done. The bottom line is, as a student advocate at the U of O for 6 years full-time, when you see issues on this campus and you bring it to the attention of the administration, it is very difficult to get movement. And we've tried collaborating with the administration, discussing it, and it comes to a point where you have to denounce publicly the things that you see that are hurting the people for whom you're advocating. And this is exactly what I did, and this is exactly what the center continues to stand by, and we continue to ask for the question of racialized groups facing unfair allegations of academic fraud and unfair procedures being applied to be properly addressed on our campus, along with the other issues that we all know exist on our campus of other applications and examples of systemic racism that go beyond the application of the system of academic fraud.
I'd just like to follow that with a statistical point. And I've looked at the numbers in the 2008 Student Appeal Center report, and I've looked at the relevant statistical theory, which is the binomial distribution with the bias. And so it's actually extremely unlikely, improbable, to have a situation where you have a visible minority on a campus and to randomly have 70% of the clients at a service be from visible minorities. It's just extremely unlikely that that would happen by chance. It's called the binomial distribution with the bias, as I said. It's like flipping a coin with a weight. So instead of a 50-50 coin, it's a coin where you have, for example, 15% one side and 85% the other side. For example, the population of visible minorities in Canada is about 15%. So it's extremely unlikely that you'd have 70% of people showing up randomly at a student center. And I think their data is good. I've done my own independent study of that, and I encourage people to look into the statistics if you're interested in statistics.
I want to thank just the two people who just spoke right now, because it does shift the conversation, I think, to something else. But I'm going to be honest, it's a little facetious for you to talk to us about racism and educate us in terms of the statistics of racism, for example, or that it's not a coincidence that 70% of the people who come to the Student Appeal Center are racialized. I think that's something you know very well. I'm just curious, did you read her recommendations to the report? And so the recommendations simply asked you maybe to use a larger sample so that we can actually use definitive material.
To which I've always responded, I only have the statistics of the people who come to my office.
Right.
The job of doing that belongs to the university, who has the integrity statistics on both its students and who's conduct academic fraud.
Right, and that's what I'm trying to say, is that we don't disagree. I don't think we don't disagree, but my issue is that when Professor St. Louis simply asked you to do a little bit of better job, or maybe even your response in terms of, well, it's not your responsibility, it's the university's responsibility, of maybe involving some of us in that conversation so that we can really try to help, and as a community try to have that community support. I think that personal line you crossed when you called her House Negro, I know not you, I'm sorry, but like, I'm just saying, like, this general area, I don't know, because we're bringing up different issues and we're having different conversations here, but I think there's one major issue, is that one is the House Negro issue and one is the personal attack, consequently the legal action, which is why this press conference was held. And the second issue is that we never disagreed. Professor St. Louis doesn't disagree with you. We don't disagree with you. It's good work to have a report that substantively and really talks about racism on campus. I don't think we disagree. It's just that, to my issue, is that one, the condescension, the facetiousness in telling me about racism is a little absurd, and two, let's not talk about Professor St. Louis. Again, this is about the students. So if we can have a conversation about the students and not talking about her as a person, because I feel like people have felt the need to come up here and defend her as a person because you've attacked her as a person. Not you specifically, but your camp. So again,
what was in the media was the question of racism and the statistics and my report, whereas when the evaluation came out, the conversation shifted, just as a lot is happening right now, to were the statistics proper, is there or isn't there? It went from student union denounces systemic racism to is there really? That, if you look at the media trail of what happened in 2008, that's what occurred in response to Professor St. Louis's evaluation. And I think that's where I took issue with, of course, the debate being shifted from what my center was trying to put forth, and of course, never trying to, the report, of course, is meant more to alert people in the administration, and if you see my demands and recommendations at the end, they're directed to the administration, of course, right? And how I propose to change the system to improve, and it was all related mainly to academic fraud, as I said before.
I just say like, that media trail is not a consequence of Professor St. Louis, right? So it's not her, she didn't ensue or encourage a conversation that disseminated against racism and race and her personal ethic. That's something that happened as a consequence to just generally talking about race issues in the Student Academic Appeal Center and general fraud issues in general. So I don't know if that's something you can necessarily attribute to her. It's a consequence of this conversation in general. So again, I don't think we disagree. I'm just saying that because we're having two different conversations, there's one about the university coming together as a club, as a group, and working together to make sure there's no racism on this campus. And secondly, the personal attacks that Hazel and Mr. Hickey have engaged in Professor St. Louis. And so my issue is maybe we cannot emotionally harm her in that way, because it's disrespectful to her, and it's disrespectful to each and every one of us.
I had something to say and now I don't remember it. I want to say that I think what we're talking about is the interpretation of a lot of things, and they're being attributed, like Rita said, they're being attributed to Professor St. Louis. She was hired, I'm assuming, by the administration. This is another thing. Let's remember that she's a professor. She's got academic freedom. She does not work for the university administration. She's a professor. She was hired to do a report. She did her report. It was 5 years ago. She submitted it. It's over. Since then, it's been interpreted in ways that have not been representative of what she intended or what she was actually saying in the report. I don't think anybody is disagreeing with your position. I think we celebrate what you were trying to do in that report. We want to work with you in your objective to address racial inequality on campus. And guess what? Professor St. Louis would be a huge asset to that struggle. So this is not about that. I think that the emotions are coming from the slur. By her doing her job, by her being hired to address this report, and her saying, okay, well, I don't deny that there's racism, but this report doesn't address it, and for that to translate as her being a house Negro is wrong. It's a legal wrong. And it's led to a lawsuit, and that's that issue, and that's what we were addressing when we were talking about her character. This report, I think we need to make sense of what that report stands for. That report is supposed to be a discussion about racism, and we stand with you in solidarity with that. But when you translate what you were trying to do and you twist it into something that attacks the character of a black advocate, that's a problem. We don't stand in solidarity with you in that.
I think that at this time, both sides have more or less exhausted, I think, what our opinions are and where we really stand. Is that fair to say? Okay, cool. Well, I think it's important, though, that we do have that going forward conversation. I think a lot of us here, after hearing these discussions, we really are progressivists. We're really about advocacy, and we're really about standing up and advocating for the rights of those who have been quieted by whether it's the administration or the fellow peers or whoever the case may be. Going forward, I have on me as a person hat, Christian Levine, but on the other side, I am president of our local Ottawa chapter of BALSA. And, personally, I would really like to, moving forward, I really would like something to come out that is legitimate and does properly speak to the issue of racism on campus, because it is an issue we all are dealing with from day to day. Nobody here is blind. We can all look at the second floor and see a bunch of pictures of a bunch of white guys that all look the same and say, there might be a problem here, right? So going forward, let's work. The problem is when you come out with a report and from an academic standpoint, and I'm not going to sit here and criticize your report. I think you should be commended that you went out and you decided to write on something you think is a problem, and you're not even from a racialized community. What that tells me is you are a true ally. So I will never take that from you. But it is also important that racialized communities, what we often deal with is issues of legitimacy, right? when we end up responding to stuff and saying, look, we're going to stand up right here, for us to get support, it's a matter of us being able to say, well, this is comprehensive, we did the necessary research, we have the proper methodology, and we've taken from a full enough group. Otherwise, in the long term, as we see here today, it can really end up undermining our efforts, right? So again, going forward, I really hope that there is a time, heck, we could be that first university that comes out with a report on academic fraud and says, hey, this is the kind of academic fraud that's going on. Like, I'm a policy guy myself, so I like working on these things. To say, this is the kind of academic fraud that's going on. These are the groups that are being affected, and it is a serious problem, and we are going to deal with it. So again, I really do commend you guys. I always err on the side of the minority. So thank you for coming here, standing up, having the press conference today, and thank you for all the supporters of St. Louis that came out here today.
Sure, there's other people who are willing to participate, and I think it'd be great. Because let's get back to the real issue here, and we're going to cloud the issue of the systemic racism if we keep discussing other things, so we need to get that report